What's up, everyone? In today's video, I want to talk about what are some of the common mistakes that people make when making a career change. And there's a handful that I can think of off the top of my head, and I really want to cover them because these are really apparent, especially once you get into the interview process. So the very first mistake that people make is not doing enough research. And when I say not doing enough research, what I mean is it's really apparent, especially when it gets into the interview process, whether someone's put in the elbow grease to do that research and to better understand what they're getting into. And so there's several ways to do research, right? There's obviously the desk research, and that's what we're most comfortable with. Going online, just Googling it and or asking ChatGPT or whatever. Um, what is this job? What are some of the things that it has, and so on. But when you dive into the interview process, it's very easy for the hiring manager to figure out like, hey, project management in one field is very different from project management in another field. Product management is in one type of product is very different from another type of product. So that's why it's so essential to go beyond the desk research, beyond just looking at the JD and spitting out the keywords. You really need to understand what is it that you're getting into? What is the developmental process, for example, if you're getting into a product such as games? Because the dev process of a game is very different from something like a website or a landing page or a product, a physical product that you sell, right? So all of these things, it's essential to go beyond just the desk research. And so what does that mean? Well, that means you need to go and speak to people, you need to conduct informational interviews, you need to network, and you need to have a thick skin to reach out to people on LinkedIn and ask, hey, what are the things that you do? Break down your role for me. On a typical week, what are the things that you do, right? So like these kinds of questions will really help you flesh out what is this job really about, and then ask for recommended readings, ask for recommended things to study up on, perhaps courses that you can take, so that you can start signaling that you have some of these building blocks that can lead to success. I can guarantee you that by doing this, you have a much higher chance of convincing someone to take a chance on you, because career changers, it's a common thing. People change careers all the time, but in order for someone to take a chance on you, you need to show that you've done the work first. And it's very obvious for a hiring manager to see whether you have done the work or you have not done the work and you're just all talk. Now, the second common mistake that people make is ignoring transferable skills. And if you haven't watched my previous video discussing transferable skills, definitely go back and take a look. I'll put it in the cards somewhere above. But transferable skills are essential because they can show that even though you have not been in that industry, you have done some of that function before. So functionally, you can do the same thing in a different industry. And that's much more easier to convince someone that, hey, you've done it before, just not for this product or this industry. And if you've done the first step, which is doing the proper research and upskilling and so on, you can start signaling that, hey, I kind of know what I'm getting into. I just need a chance, right? And sometimes you also got to think about the transferable skills from another industry is actually really helpful for perhaps the industry that you want to get into. So one of my clients made a transition into UX research for a big bank. And what made her stand out as a candidate is actually her experience doing academic research, having her PhD, and doing all that ethnography and qualitative work. And by having that background, right? Not a traditional HCI, yeah, human computer interaction. Just for context, a lot of UX researchers have a social science background and then they get a HCI master's and then they use that as a stepping stone into UX research. But in this case, my client has a PhD in sociology. She worked on her own business at one point, selling product in Taiwan. And eventually, this background, this unique blend of background in terms of an international experience, in terms of having run her own business, in terms of having that research acumen, all those pieces put together has made her quite successful in her new role. So you got to think about when you talk about transferable skills, it's not only about like some people follow that traditional trajectory and get promoted internally into certain roles. And yeah, that's cool and all. But then there are also people who come in from different roles and have a very successful transition. Um, a common example in America would be people with a military background. Develop a lot of skills and knowledge and know-how and structure and just know how to work with people in complex environments. And all of that becomes really useful when it goes into a corporate environment or any job that may require some of those skills. So definitely do not neglect those transferable skills. The third mistake that people make is being vague about their career goals. And as someone who's seen a lot of resumes and have done some hiring, the very first thing that gives away whether you are clear about your career goals or not is actually in your LinkedIn and in your resume. You know that LinkedIn, that heading that you have, after your name, underneath there's that heading. And I've spoken with other hiring managers as well. And one of the things that really jump out to us as when we make hiring decisions is, does this person really want to be in our field? Like, are they going to stick around? Because it's going to have a lot of implications, right? What's the retention of this individual? Are they going to be happy with the compensation? When stuff hits the fan, are they going to be willing to stick around, right? And so we really want to see that this person is committed and this person is actually interested in doing what they claim to want to do. And that's why it's really important for you, if you're making a career change, to signal that this is exactly what you want to do. Don't give people the opportunity to second guess your candidacy. So one client of mine had a problem where he was like, I want to be a communications person. Oh, I also want to be a researcher. Oh, I also could be a project manager. And try to fit all those titles or all these elements into their resume. And as I read their resume and as I read their LinkedIn and all that, I gave them this feedback. It's like, if I was a hiring manager, I would have no idea what you are and what you want to be, and you would be the first one into the no pile. If you're lucky, you might get into the maybe pile, right? You won't even get an interview. So that's why it's so critical. It's so critical to signal that you are exactly who you claim to be and that you have done the work to make this transition, right? For anyone to give you a chance to do it. And to be very frank, if you're trying to make a career change, most likely it's going to be at kind of like at mid-level at best. And last but not least, the fourth mistake that people make is underestimating the importance of networking. And networking really isn't just like a phase that you need to network. It's a long process. Career changes are not easy. It does take time. Not only is it about taking time to learn the skills, you also need to learn the language. You also need to know who's who in the industry. You also need to know what are the companies to apply for. How are these companies a little bit different from one another? And some of these nuances, and being plugged into certain communities and networks and starting to speak to people who work in that industry and just being a common face in that industry is really important. So in certain industries, there are shared communities, there are Discord channels, there are LinkedIn communities, and just being active in them, reacting to people's posts, commenting on them, and also showing that you've done the work and read their stuff and then reach out and then compliment them and then start a conversation. These are all ways to plant seeds and, water them and so on, but they're not going to bloom immediately. It's going to take time. It's going to take months, if not years, to make a transition. So I have the good fortune to be in the gaming industry, which is an industry that I've always wanted to be in as a kid. Sometimes when we're talking about people who are trying to make this jump into the gaming industry, really comes down to how long have they been trying it? How long have they been connecting with people? And are they connecting properly, right? So I want to be very clear. There are some people who simply network the wrong way and get attention the wrong way, and once you burn those bridges, it's nearly impossible to break it in, because people will look at LinkedIn, who's connected to who, and ask for references and all that stuff. So just to be very clear, when trying to make a career change, networking is very important, but you got to also land the right impression. And ultimately, when the time comes, if there's a role that opens up, whether it's a contract role or whether it's an FTE role, you can always then get referred in. And people would generally be pretty happy with referring you because it would typically give them some kind of commission, right, on Workday. So a lot of HR platforms, they have these referral buttons where people can just refer you and then they get compensated for it. Don't worry about asking about the referral, because sometimes they just have to refer you. And in some cases, they can say that they've worked with you. In some cases, they can say that, oh, this is just an acquaintance. I don't know too much about this individual. Right? So there are different levels of referrals as well. It's their responsibility to say no, and it's your responsibility to ask. And that's it. That's 4 pretty common mistakes that people tend to make when trying to make a career transition. I hope this was helpful to you. And if you like this video, please give it a like, follow, subscribe. Take care, everyone. I'll see you around.